This is the start of the apocalypse, and no one is talking about it. This should be all over the news. People need to know. But I've checked, and since those useless fucks aren't saying a damn thing about it, I guess I'll have to tell you here. First things first, it's too late for all of us. Don't think you can do anything to change the way things are now, or the way they are going to be. After you read this, just board up your windows, grab some weapons, and ration your food. Do not go outside. Do not leave your house unless you absolutely need to. I don't know how far this thing has spread. All I know is that the shit has hit the fan here so fast. There's no way that anyone will get it under control before it spreads throughout the country. Right now, I'm in my 5th floor studio apartment. I didn't have time to board up my windows, and it's too late for that now. Loud noises attract them. I'm lucky to be so high off the ground. They can't bust through the glass anyway. I put some thick blankets up, though, so I don't have to see them. Hearing them is enough torture. The first murder happened at a small park down the street from me. A homeless man mauled a woman to death in broad daylight with his bare hands and teeth. Bashed her head in, ate her face and throat, ripped out her insides and munched on those too. We all thought it was just another nutcase on bath salts. He was shot down, and we thought that was the end of it. But in the following days, it happened again, and again, and again, until the whole town was in a panic. So many people were dead. We wished they would have stayed that way. For 2 weeks, I laid low. I stayed in my apartment. I listened to the groaning and growling and screaming from the streets below me. I cried. I prayed. Things got quieter, eventually. The screams only came occasionally, when some poor soul tried to make a run for it and got caught. And while the growling still happened often, it wasn't constant and relentless like before. Just a few of the infected passing by. Eventually, I ran out of food. So I did what I had to do to survive. I put on my big girl pants, grabbed my backpack and metal baseball bat, and ventured out into the open to raid the closest store I could find. My mother always told me to hope for the best, but prepare for the worst, and that is exactly what I did. I knew full well that once I left, there was a good chance I wouldn't make it back. But I had a choice to make: stay in my apartment, starve, and die for sure, or leave my apartment, prepare to kick ass, and maybe die. Obviously, I chose the latter. I took a deep breath, tightened the straps of my backpack. I raised my bat and clutched it tight, my knuckles turning white. I opened my door and stepped outside into the hallway. There was nothing, just silence. I think it was scarier than what I expected. An infected person running toward me at full speed. It made me realize how utterly alone I was. All of my neighbors, gone. Just me in a small town, and a bunch of monsters outside, waiting to tear me to shreds. I hadn't, and still haven't, been in touch with my mother or the few friends I had in weeks, despite my attempts at reaching out to them. I've assumed the worst. There was no time to mourn. I crept towards the stairwell and opened the door, careful not to let it slam behind me. I paused, listening for the noise of the dead. I heard no grunting, no groaning, no growling. None of the animalistic sounds they made non-stop when they were around. And so I ventured down the stairs. I made it to the exit without incident. Step 1 of my mission was complete. I cracked open the door and peered outside. I saw nothing but a dumpster and a brick wall behind it. Another side of the building. I slipped out the door. I wasn't careful enough, and it slammed behind me with a loud bang. I immediately hauled ass down the road. I heard a symphony of deafening roars somewhere far behind me. They were growing louder, and I realized what had happened. I had attracted the horde. I was too far away to turn back. I'd just be running straight toward them if I did that. I ducked into an alley and hid behind a dumpster. Fuck. I listened to them howl as they ran by. One thing I know about these things is they have 2 feelings. The first one is aggression. The second is hunger. Their hunger is insatiable. When things started getting out of control, I'd sometimes watch in horror from my window as they tore people apart, ripping out their insides and feasting on them as the victims screamed and cried hopelessly until they eventually turned, becoming the very thing that slaughtered them. The horde was huge. There had to be at least 30 of them. I had no idea how many of them were still in my town. I knew they were there, but I guess I just thought most of them moved on to the other, more populated places after they wiped out mine. I stayed behind that dumpster until one of them staggered down the alleyway towards me, fortunately unnoticed by the other beasts. That was the first time I ran into one face to face. When she noticed me, she let out a low snarl and cocked her head, revealing the gory mess that was her neck. She limped a bit closer. Her leg was snapped in half, dragging behind her. Her arms hung limply at her sides. I noticed that her eyes were light blue, with a weird, milky film over them. Her hair was thin and white, her pale face covered in old, dry blood. The second she reached out for me, I bashed her over the head with my bat as hard as I could before running down the other side of the alley. I stopped a few feet before I reached the road to make sure the coast was clear. It wasn't. There had to be at least 15 of them wandering around on that side. I was stuck. I turned around, my heart racing in fear. Bloody Neck was crumpled on the ground where I'd hit her. I walked back over to take a look. Brains and blood seeped out of her skull as she lay there, completely still. Cautiously, I poked her in the side with my bat and got no reaction. Then did it again to be sure. I'd done it. I'd killed my first dead person. I waited a few more hours for the streets to clear, and finally made it back home, wondering where it was they hide when they're not out in the open. I'm still out of food. Mission failed. But at least I'm alive. And at least they didn't follow me home. I'll try again tomorrow. My advice to you? Prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and get him in the head. That was a really fun story to end the year off with. I had a blast reading that one for whatever reason. I think it's just because the writing is so aggressive and I like it. But I just wanted to take a moment. I know I don't usually talk at the end of these. I usually just let you guys go to the next story or whatever. Maybe you haven't even made it to the end of these stories before, but I did want to thank you. Even if it's your first time listening to one of these stories, I wanted to thank you for making this a great year. Thank you for all of your time. I know that your time is precious and I appreciate you listening to these stories. I am also very happy that you guys also seem to really love zombie stories. Zombie stories are my absolute favorite stories. My favorite book of all time is World War Z. I've read dozens, maybe 100 zombie novels at this point, and I just seem to never be able to get enough of reading about zombies, writing about zombies, narrating for zombies, and I'm just really happy you guys seem to like zombies too. So I'm going to keep a zombie trend going for as long as you guys enjoy it, or as long as I still want to read it. But I mean, I've been listening to zombie stuff and reading zombie stuff for like 20 years now. So I'm going to guess that I'm probably never going to stop liking zombie stuff. But from my family to yours, Happy New Year, and I look forward to the new year.